be 16, be black, and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers that they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, my cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. They know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious that something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. I tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and I say that we're camping out. He tells us that we need to be real careful out here and stick together, that there was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. I'm gonna stop green texting because this story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football and dicking around. There's me, the white kid Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17 years old. We ended up just dicking the day away and going back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner said he wants to run home. His family's property sits up against my uncle's, and ask if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's getting pretty dark, and one of the girls said she's going to walk with them. It's about 7 o'clock and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us chill and make s'mores, drink and trying to kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's that smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire that we had started. And this really nasty coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we all can smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tanner, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride. They all run right into the trailer, by where the fire is. We all nope the fuck out of there and get into the trailers. They end up calming down, even Rooster's crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it, and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, "Fuck no, lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside." He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure that he could go out camping, but to make sure that they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before, and then one of their pigs had come up, ripped up, and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff, and told his dad that they would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes avoid people, so they started walking back toward where we were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first at what the fuck it was. The girl says that she hears something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they had shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and that what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking and they start smelling that nasty coppery ozone smell. And they say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side and it's a dude standing in the forest, backwards slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, "I should have taken the fucking rifle." As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, that a kind of low gibbering had started coming out from both sides of the woods, and they started booking it back to the trailer. The girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods, and the gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them, onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and at this point we're assuming it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We all promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now, but he just keeps on going about how it's the fucking Goatman and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of a Goatman or any of that, but then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had met him for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, "The Goatman's going to get in and fucking get us." The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies, or if it's some animal. So, all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away, or they get less. It just literally was there 1 second, and then not the next. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we've stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay for another night, and for the main part of that night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what about, the smell comes back. And it's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. And I say that we should get inside. This isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside and we're standing around. And my cousin just keeps going on about how it's the Goatman. And my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. All the while I'm just feeling that something is wrong. And I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats in a pack, and we have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how the fuck do I get 2 and everybody else only get 1. And I look at him like he's just fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12 brats. If he wants more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tanner just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up on what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is just banging against the side of the trailer, as everybody books out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks what the fuck was wrong, and I start counting us. And now, there's only 11 of us. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed that something was off. You know how when you are just dicking around having a good time, you don't sweat the small shit, and you don't always keep track of certain stuff. But I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day eating with us. And what makes it worse is I could figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person, or with the Goatman. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin. And there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's still 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized it too. And that when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard, leaned over toward her, and said something that she couldn't understand. So we are pretty much scared as fuck, and we huddle together. And then I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep, and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kyra, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I ask her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says that she just wants to go home, and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split people up, and the 4 that want to can go, and that I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely don't want to be out in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left. This is about 4 o'clock. At around 5, he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. The only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to go get a gun. It's about 5:30 or so, when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kyra is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit, with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. But now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them, and everybody, being the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, are laughing at me and asking, did I set this up to scare them? I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kyra. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kyra starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. And it was the fact that I thought this that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chittering. So I step out the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door and pull down all the shades, except one. We put someone there in the chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there. And then there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other 2 are all kinda giggling with nervous laughter. And me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tanner. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing!" So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kyra, standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with this slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing toward the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer that he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without even seeing her move, she had been turning and basically inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way to the cabin, thinking it would be open, and when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned around and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know, there are only 6 of you in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops into your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where. And then, when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it has just slipped right back in. We look out the window and there's nobody out there. So we recount everyone, and then basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. And everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are here now?" They all do the count, and then realize there's only 7 people in the cabin. So Tanner had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle. He had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning, we can all go back to his place, and his cousin will drive us home. Now, I'm really fucking terrified. But I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then, my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared, and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know that the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner, and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we fucking get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, it's something bad in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her that that's a fucking no-go, because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down, and it's getting a little cloudy out. We heat something up and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off. At about that time, Tanner's cousin shows up. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tanner, asking if he's sure that that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, and then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and then looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" And if we had been cooking blood in the cabin, because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up to the trail. We all fucking nope and ask him what the fuck he's talking about. He had come down the same trail that Tanner had been using, and that he had come up on one of you guys' buddies, just standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then she smiled at him, and he said he kept walking, but she couldn't seem to keep up with him, and kept lagging a little behind them. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed help, and that she just continued to stare. He said eventually he had been walking and had turned around a bend in the trail. And when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He had assumed that she had taken some sort of shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on, and he nopes the fuck out. Like, I expected him to say that we're full of shit. He was like 19, I think. But he just listened, and then sat down on the couches in the living room. He says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. And that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. He said eventually it got really strong, and that she had said something really low that he didn't catch. And he had turned around, and she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wants him to carry her back the rest of the way. And she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance, because she was off to the side where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real, unless Tanner is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. We load up their rifles and we eat some more, and we kind of just sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me, and just never revealed so I would shit for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross blood smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door. And I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. And it says in this halting, weirdly toned voice,
"Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing."
It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body. One of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. And that's some shit that I never realized until that moment. Everyone has a kind of cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of rhythm. YouTube those cats, that's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So, no, I'm in full-on terror mode. And we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying,
"In."
Or,
"Let me the fuck in."
For almost 15 minutes. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. And every couple minutes it comes back into the door and says something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning right now, Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river across from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, crawling toward the cabin, and that he had shot at it. And pretty much that was how the rest of that night went. It literally was screaming constantly for the next 2 hours. And we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us and he had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized that something was wrong. And while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try and shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us all then and there. Or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So, he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing. But then it would lay back down. So the story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tanner was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. We stayed last in the cabin and said he would lock up and bring me my uncle's keys, and to just start walking, and he would catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path, and then he came running up, and basically we just jogged back to his house, and his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tanner had gone back to lock up and look in there. He said there was a window that we were too stupid to lock, and that there was no screen on it. The window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up, and then get among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house. And then he said it lagged to the back of the group, and then looked him dead in the eyes, and walked into the woods.